Hi there, and welcome to another interview. Today I've got the fantastic Jessica with me, and I'm going to ask Jessica the question I ask every single guest. Hey, Jessica, why did you become carnivore?
Basically, for me, I have been in health and fitness for about 20 odd years. I was a personal trainer back in the day, and I was very much paleo, so whole foods based, but a very high amount of carbohydrates and vegetables. I thought it was important. I thought it was a big part of health. And I taught that for many, many years. I always prioritized meat. Like, I always understood the importance of quality protein and fats, but I kind of missed the part where vegetables were bad. And I used to manipulate the variables a lot because I'd make all my own breads from scratch and made all my own raw hummuses, from vegetables. I literally did it all from scratch. And so I knew that we needed to activate or soak and sprout nuts and seeds in order to even make them slightly absorbable by the human body. And even though I did all these processes, I still didn't realize, and it never came into my mind that maybe I shouldn't be eating those things anyway if I was having to go through all these processes to even be able to put it in my mouth. But that's what I did for a very long time. It was a good 18 years of my industry in health was, meat and vegetables. I knew about fructose and the problems with that. So I haven't really eaten fruit in the last 2 decades, but I was very, very high vegetable matter. So then what happened basically was my fiance had started researching more about carnivore. And he said to me, honey, look at this information. It's really making a lot of sense to me. It's really common sense. And I found this amazing professor who talks all about it. And I think you should listen to his interview and listen to his research. And I was like, I don't have time. I've got no time to look at research. I just didn't want to look at that vegetables might not be good for me. I wasn't willing to look at it. I wasn't willing to even bring that into my sphere because what did that mean? What did that mean for me, for the things I'd done to myself, but also for the way I coached clients? And it was humbling. I had to kind of drop my ego and look at this. So basically I didn't, but my fiance was working out of town. He was working out of London for about 3 months. And so he was away half the week and home half the week. And he started to transform. And he was already a very fit and healthy man. And his skin started looking better and his insomnia went away and he started dropping body fat. And I was like, okay, what are you doing? And he said, well, I've decided while I'm out of town that I'm going to be carnivore while I'm away. Said, look at this research, babe. Just honestly, just have a little look. Sent me this clip of Professor Bart Kay. Said, watch this guy. He's Kiwi like you. He's blunt like you. He's got a potty mouth just like you. You guys would get on like a house on fire. Just watch his stuff. And so he sent me this interview and I didn't look at it for weeks. And I remember I clicked on the YouTube link and it was Bart Kay. And Professor Kay was actually one of my university professors. So I knew him. And so I said to my hubby, oh my God, I know him. And he had like full-on fanboy. He was like, oh my God, do you know him? Do you think he'll remember you? He was so excited because he just had such regard for Professor Kay and his work and his knowledge and him sharing with the world. So that's kind of how my whole carnivore journey sparked. I got back in contact with Bart and I looked much, much deeper into nutrition because, being at university as well, you only learn what they allow you to learn. And that is so the truth. They only teach you what they want to teach you. And I had to unlearn a lot of stuff that I had learned, what I thought I knew about food, all the smart, clever things I thought I knew about, combining different ions to get better absorption. And we've got to put meat iron with non-heme iron with vegetable iron, and that will increase the absorption. And I used to spout this stuff off like absolute gospel, Stephen. Like I thought I knew it all. So I had to really unlearn a lot of stuff. And so for a really long time, probably a year maybe, I slowly transitioned over because I was okay dropping the really toxic vegetables, but I didn't want to let go of like the breads that I made and all the things that I made that, you know, my family had come to love, that we got used to eating. And being like a huge butter fan, I liked a bread kind of object that I could shovel butter into my body with. And so I didn't want to let go of bread. And I made this nutseed loaf. And so first I made it low oxalate, and I pulled out all the seeds and the nuts, and I tried to add more coconut, and I did all this stuff. Like I really did try and hang on to dear life to some objects. I was also pregnant at the time. So I was pregnant with my third child. And I was like, yeah, I really don't want to let go of everything. And so I hung on for a while. And then in January 2021, I decided to do the 90-day carnivore challenge. And we did it together. Professor Bart Kay and I did it through the Steak and Butter Gang. And it was incredible. I was only eating probably a very small amount of vegetables by that point anyway, and all the very low oxalate ones. But I was like, and I had no intention on sticking like that. I had this idea in my head that I'll do the 90 days. And then after the 90 days, I'll add back in the little bit of, you know, lettuce, iceberg lettuce, cucumber, you know, whatever I was eating, the tiny bit that I had left. I thought, yeah, I'll put that back in. I'll just do the 90 days. And the 90 days were transformational, utterly.
Yeah.
So I was kind of like, well, I'm never going back, you know?
Yeah, that's my story, actually, because I started as a challenge and it was just so good. That was 4 years ago. I did a 30-day challenge. So, yeah, that's good. I'm sorry to butt in, but there's a particular thing I'd like to ask you. Was there anything health-wise, or was there something that was bugging you that made you be quite open to carnivore as a possibility?
There were a few little health issues that still lingered, because obviously even just not eating processed food, I didn't eat any like high density carbohydrates like rice or bread or pasta. I hadn't eaten that stuff in forever. It was really down to vegetables and meat for 2 decades. And so I was in a pretty good state, but I still had some underlying like dermatitis, some skin issues on my hands. I had some fat and inflammation that just would not shift. Like it did not matter how lean I got, how little I was, I still had quite a lot of inflammation around my ankles. And I talk about this because I thought I had cankles, and I didn't, because once I did the 90 days, I actually had an ankle bone. And you can see in my before and after pictures that I went from having no ankle to having an ankle. And that was just one of the many benefits for me. My skin conditions cleared up. Some of the skin and elasticity issues that I had in my skin, as well as stretch marks and wrinkles and deep crevices in my forehead. I had really deep, like a frown line here, and deep crevices. These things all started to heal and to get better. And these are things that are not meant to heal. And so I was like, okay, what the hell is going on? As well as that, my sleep got better, my energy levels got better. Not that I thought that I had bad energy, but they improved even more. I was suddenly like bouncing off the walls 24/7. And my sleep improved, my libido went up, not that that needed to go up either, but you know, there were parts of my life that started to improve that I wasn't really expecting to. And those were the main ones for me, was the clarity of mind, the energy, the skin, the wrinkles, the stretch marks, and the body fat. So it's quite a lot really when you list it all out. But I wasn't looking to improve my health, weirdly. I was kind of looking to say, okay, I eat the tiniest amount of vegetable matter now. What is it actually doing to my body if I take this out? And because I had such a restricted, limited input at that time, it was quite easy to look at that and say, this is this, because obviously when there's heaps of variables going on, it's harder to determine what's doing what. But I trained very little for those 90 days, because people message me and they're like, oh, your transformation, you know, what weight training were you doing? What exercise were you doing? I was doing minimal, like probably the least amount of training that I've done in 2 decades. I was doing 1 to 2 very light resistance sessions a week. And the main reason I did that as well was just so I could look at what are these results if I do this, rather than, all the other things at the same time.
But that's being a good scientist, because if you didn't do that, and actually there's some influencers out there who I really love. What I learned is a great channel, but whenever they do experiments, he changes one thing and then adds another and a bit of training or something. And I think, well, you've just messed up your experiment. It's a great channel. I'm not knocking him, but I think you did the right thing there. You changed your nutrition. You took out the bad veg and saw how that made a difference. And I think that's one of the things we've got in common. And a lot of what you said really resonated with me, because my qualifications in diabetes and obesity, I had to unlearn a lot of things, because once you meet real people and you meet clients that say, oh, I'm low carb, and oh, right, okay, that seems to be working for you. And the more you see the outside of the academia, you realize that you are being fed, no pun intended, some real dodgy information, for want of a better word. So you've got this long history of being a trainer. I'm a personal trainer as well. So we looked pretty good. You see, this is the thing, this is the problem. People out there that think, well, I'm doing okay. What Jessica is saying is what I feel as well, is you don't know how good you can be, and things that you think, like cankles, for instance, you mentioned there, you just think, well, that's a thing, that's me, that's my genetics or whatever. Then you go carnivore and you think, whoa, I've actually got ankles, which is a brilliant thing for you to say, because I think anyone sitting on the fence, you'll never know how good it is, even if you are training and you look pretty good. I mean, I would say, when we look at your before and after pictures, which we'll add in the edit, you look pretty good, but you now look even better. So you must have got some pushback, I assume, from clients, because if you've been in the industry a long time, to suddenly go from saying veg is okay to not. I mean, did you have pushback, or did you find it quite easy to get it out there?
You know what? It's quite funny, because the main part of pushback I had was not from clients. I'm very much the type of girl that when I come across something, I test it vigorously on myself, and then I test it with clients, and it spreads out. So they kind of knew that it had been something on my radar for quite a while, because I share very openly what I'm doing. So it was like, okay, high oxalates, got back in contact with my professor, looking down the rabbit hole, and I shared that as I went. So it wasn't this like complete polar opposite all suddenly. It was very gradual. As I learn, my clients learn. And so we kind of went on that journey together, which was really beautiful, actually. The pushback that I got that I wasn't expecting was more from my family, not from my direct fiance and kids, but from my sister and, from other family members. Because I've been in health for so long, and they have always taken my advice, Stephen. They always... I mean, I literally, one has lost more than 35 kilos, the other more than 40. This is the grandparents. My sister and mum on both different occasions have lost like 20 plus kilos, doing just meat and veg and my programming. And combined with NRT. And so what they believed was that I had the golden nugget already. So why am I now saying that vegetables are bad? And so my sister actually said to me, is this just another thing, Jess? Because I don't really understand how you've gone from this to now saying this. I was really open about it. I was like, look, I just didn't know enough. And I didn't look deeper, because as we know, once we've learned something and we feel pretty proficient in what we're teaching, it just comes out. It's autopilot. I taught by what I thought I really knew about the body and nutritional science, and I actually knew like none. So I just, I was open about that, and I said, look, I thought this and I never looked deeper, and then this is actually the case, and it makes a lot of sense. And that's the thing too, it makes a ton of sense when you start talking about it and when you start teaching people about why vegetables are harmful, why they don't want to be eaten, what they've got in them that does that, how it binds to different minerals and things in our body, how it creates different crystals, like all of that is very sciencey. And so I can explain that quite well to people, and they're like, oh, okay, didn't know the kids in these could only process that much oxalates and what it does and all the things. So, you know, client-wise, great. And a huge portion of my clients are either now fully carnivore or very heavy meat-based with low oxalate vegetables if they've chosen to keep them. And it's, you know, it wasn't a push for me. I wasn't like, you must do this, because ultimately health is about nervous system function, nervous system health, and that is from so many different angles. It's not just what we put in our mouth, it's not just our sleep, it's not just our stress, it's a combination of all of these things on our nervous system and how we deal with that. And so by stressing somebody out massively, going, you must not eat this or you must do that, is not necessarily the best thing for their health, even if the foods that they're putting in aren't the greatest. And so I work with each individual person to make sure that this is what's right for them and that it's sustainable. They can do it. You know, it's not alienating them from their friends or family or from themselves. And that, you know, it's something that they want to do. And it's been really interesting. One of my London clients, because I do work online, still I'm now in New Zealand, but one of my London VIPs, you know, we had done tons of treatment on his body. He was in incredible shape. His neuromuscular function was insane, like everything operating really well. And he just had this residual tiny bit of left lat ache. And we were like, well, we looked at all of it on a neuromuscular level. And then I was like, mate, it's not this. He was having the tiniest amount of plants, maybe 5%, you know, tiny. And I said to him, let's just get rid of that. Just do a month, just do 30 days, just with that last tiny piece out, let's see. And like within a week, that residual ache had finally dissipated. And so it's these amazing things that sometimes it's just that last little bit that makes such a change in somebody's life. So tiny bit of pushback, but yeah, not from where I expected it. And the grandparents have still not trusted me. They still think their vegetables are fine. I had taken them from a really bad and healthy kind of typical mixed macro American diet to paleo and very clean. And she actually found out years later that she was actually a celiac. So had she not done even those steps, she probably would have been dead. She didn't know about it. And she'd lost, as I said, 30 plus kilos from going to Whole Foods. And so when I said to her, look, because she's still not in a great health state, like even being lighter, she thinks, you know, people think that weight equates health, and it doesn't. And so in her head, she's thin and she likes her vegetables and she is invested in those in so many different ways. And she's not willing to give them up. She thinks she'd lose something by doing it, even though I've said so many times to people, just do 30 days, just try it, see what happens on you, and then you have some information that you can work with. She didn't want to do the 30 days, she didn't want to try it, and you know, just is shut down to that. And that's okay. With love, that's her choice, and that's fine. But I've had that with my sister as well, and my sister's family. They still completely ignore everything that I say about this particular section. But what I truly believe, Stephen, is that in 10 more years, with the way that I'm going to look, they're going to start really questioning what they're doing. I already get asked, like, people's favorite game is playing How Old I Am. And I love that game, actually. I'm like, yeah, let's play that game. Because my skin is good, my hair is good, my health is good, my, you know, all these things. And it's only going to show up more and more as we age. And so I know at some point, eventually in the future, hopefully they will turn around and look at this more deeply. But for the meanwhile, I'm happy with, you know, my dad has gone carnivore. So my dad jumped on the bandwagon. He's lost 18 kilos. His wife, my stepmother, she has gone carnivore and she's a ICU nurse. And she is now starting to slowly implement it into her workplace. So people are starting to bring in frittatas and sausages and bacon and stuff for lunch and starting to leave the vegetables. But I had to do a 3-hour consult with her to sit down to talk her through all of her questions, all of the debates, all the whats. And we sat there and we just chatted for 3 hours until she had like a really good understanding about it and why the literature that she's even being resourced with at her hospital is so wrong and so backwards. And she was open-minded, and that's usually all it takes, just a little bit of open mind and then some questioning and then some talking. And she's now carnivore. She's lost over 10 kilos. My dad did it first, and she just watched for ages, and then she jumped on the bandwagon. My mum has lost more than 4 dress sizes since she got back from Australia. And I have said this quite openly, like, my mum moved back from Australia in a horrific health. She was like a dumpling. She had no neck, no waist. She was very round and soft and squishy. Love you, Mum. And she was in a really bad place, mentally and physically. And she has gone heavy beet based and has had epic results and has completely transformed her body. So, you know, people in my family have, and other people are like, no, I'm not going to listen to you. And I'm okay with that. It's not really about them. It's about my journey and doing what's right for me, and also teaching this to other people, because I am in health, and it is very simple to be healthy. And we have overcomplicated, the world has overcomplicated it with, oh, you need this many grams of this and you must eat this with that, and it's not absorbing because you've got to put these things together. Like, it's insanity. That as human beings, we don't really know what is species specific for us and what to eat. And so that's what I want to share. I want to share that it's easy to get healthy. I want to share that this is what we're meant to eat. And when you have just that base of what to put in your mouth and knowing that part solely, then you can work on the other pieces of the pie. But yeah, that's why I love talking to people. That's why I love sharing my journey, because I was confused. You've got to remember, I was a freaking unhealthy teenager. I was fat. I was sick. I had bowel problems. They thought I had Paget's disease. They thought I had Crohn's disease, which is different rare forms of cancer. I had gut and bowel issues. I'd never gone to the toilet like a normal human. I thought that was a normal stool. I didn't know that that was not at all how it was meant to be. I was basically pretty sick and pretty unhealthy. And so I got into fitness because I was looking to help myself. I was like, okay, I need to fix me. I don't know how to do that. I'd tried everything you can imagine, like all the different dieting things. I'd done, Weight Watchers and Jenny Craig's, which are like types of programs here in New Zealand. I had done calorie restriction and counting. I'd weighed my food at one point, Stephen. I used to cut out my 25 grams of cheese and my 10 little round rice crackers. And I mean, I was obsessed with food, and I was completely confused about what to do. I'd tried lots of different supplements. I'd been to homeopathy people, and I'd been to nutritionists and dietitians and had all the different tests done. Spent thousands, like literally thousands and thousands of dollars. I even went vegetarian for almost a year. I was vegetarian. And that's when I got really sick, like really, really sick. My whole body just basically shut down. I had these welts. It's like a rash that came up in these lumps, and then they crusted and then kind of exploded, and they were green and yellow and pussy and weepy all over my face. Like, I did not leave the house for 2 weeks. And we went to the doctor, and they're trying all these creams and these ointments and these steroids and these antibiotics and all this stuff. And my mum turned around and went, "You're eating meat again. Like, this is ridiculous." Because I was doing it for the animals. I was trying to save the planet. And she was like, "You are sick, you are eating meat." And so thank God for her, I went back to eating meat. But like, the reason I got into health was for myself. First, before I was like, oh yeah, I want to help everybody else, I want to be this amazing trainer, I was like, no, I need to heal me. I need to work out what the hell is going on with me first, and then I'm going to share that. And so that's kind of how it all started right from the beginning. But we're talking childhood eczema, childhood gut problems, childhood weight problems, childhood mental health problems, like all of these things that I thought were just normal for a teenage girl to be going through. I didn't realize I was actually really pretty sick, and that the doctors really didn't know how to help me, because all the tests that they done came back negative. I didn't have Paget's or Crohn's disease. I had cameras put up and in, and all the things, and they couldn't find anything that was like clear in their mind as to why I was having all these issues. So yeah, even just going paleo, becoming a trainer, learning all that stuff, I did heal a lot of my issues. Now understanding though that what I was basically doing is not invoking the Randall cycle and ending up with inflammation. And that's what was the biggest change for me. My quantities and my ratios changed, and I took out some of the inflammatories and sugars, but I missed the big part, which is that vegetables do not want to be eaten and plants are not healthy just because they're plants. It doesn't make it healthy just because it's a plant. And that the vitamins and nutrients we don't need from this rainbow of colors of different foods. And that it is really simple, and that is that we can get everything that we need from one piece of steak. That is a balanced diet. And now I'm at that point and I have a really depth of understanding about that. I'm like, okay, now I want to share this as much as I can, because if we could get this out to the world and everybody just ate meat, oh my God, can you imagine what would happen? So that's my driver.
Yeah, and that is amazing. Now, I've never done this on a video before, but if you're listening on the podcast audio, you can't play this game. But don't tell me your age, Jessica. But if you're watching this video, just press pause and in the comment, have a guess. And then at the end of the video, we will reveal Jessica's age. And I'm going to play the game because I have no idea. All right. I genuinely have no idea. So looking at you, and I'm really sorry for the people on the audio podcast. I would genuinely put you about, I know this isn't true because of what you said. When people say, guess my age, they're always older. But if you didn't say that and I just looked at your picture, I think you're about 29. Now, for those, again, watching the audio, they're not going to see that my T-shirt, to stop this argument, mine says born 1964. Mine actually says that on my T-shirt because I'm 59 and people don't believe I'm 59. So it's a testament to Carnivore, because pretty much everybody I interview, I don't really do the research on age. And I've had people in their 70s I thought were 50 odd, So that game's now over. So back to, even if it's audio, everyone's going to enjoy this. So there's loads of excellent information there. I would also say to you, I made my own bread. I thought that was great, and a lot of people I coached, one of the first things they say is, I don't think I can give up my bread. When you go carnivore, honestly, once you've done it a few months, things like that are not in your head at all. You get this food freedom, which is amazing. But you mentioned oxalates. So just for people that are listening, you try to make a low oxalate bread, which, I understand. I understand why you did that. So why was that in your mind? What's wrong with oxalate?
Okay, so as we talked about with plants not wanting to be eaten and the different chemicals inside them, they have something called oxalates, anti-nutrients, essentially, oxalates, lectins, and phytates. And what they are, or essentially what they do, is create major havoc in our body. And they do different things in our body. But oxalates particularly love to bind to calcium in our body. And when they bind, they create these sharp pieces. If you look at a microscope, it looks like little shards of glass, long, sharp spears. And what they do is essentially they punch tiny holes in our gut. So they perforate our stomach. And they also like to store themselves in our joints. So when I was talking before about pain and stuff, we can have sore, achy, immobile joints thinking, oh, it's just age. I'm just getting old, people love to say, I'm just aging. You shouldn't age like that, for one. It's not normal. And so what they do is they cause inflammation and pain in our joints. They obviously rip our stomach apart. And among a lot of other things that they do. Anti-nutrients, another big issue with them is the fact that they actually block the absorption of other nutrients. So I used to spout out that if you had a piece of steak and you had spinach with it, which are both rich sources in iron, apparently, that you would increase the absorption of that iron by 25% by coupling them together. Okay, that's what I learned at university. And I loved spouting that out. I thought I was so clever. I was not. Then I obviously, now knowing that actually by eating that spinach, which is high oxalates, toxic as spinach is incredibly toxic, what it actually does is blocks the absorption of the iron and the nutrients from the meat if you eat it at the same time. So I was literally spouting the polar opposite of what the actual case is. And so, yeah, so that's what I tried to do first. I was like, okay, again, I was just trying to be clever. I was like, don't want to lose my bread. Let's pull out the nuts and seeds and the high oxalates. Let's put some low oxalate things in there and try and keep it. And it wasn't very nice. I'm not going to lie, Stephen, like the coconut loaf was not very good, but I still tried to hang on to it. I was like, it's okay. I can put it in. And yeah, I'm so glad that I don't have that confusion anymore, that I really do have that deep knowing. And like you said, once you start eating this way, and it's not a restriction, it really isn't. I love what I eat. It's delicious. I look forward to it, but I don't obsess like I used to. I used to think about when I was eating a meal, I'd be thinking about my next meal. I'd be having my ridiculous light and tasty cereal with my low-fat, calcium-rich milk. I mean, and then I'd be thinking about my crackers and cheese that I'd have at my mid-morning break, and I'd be thinking all day long. All I did was obsess about food and think about food. I got chronic hangry, which is like when your blood sugar levels start to drop and you just turn into a freaking nightmare. That was me. I mean, to the point that I had to eat, Stephen, every 2 to 3 hours. If not, I was a emotional nightmare. I'd get the shakes. I'd get moody, like terribly. And I thought that was great. I thought that meant my body was working really well and it was telling me when it needed fuel. And I mean, God knows what I thought I knew about food back then, but getting rid of all of that and letting all of that go really has been given me food freedom. I don't think about food at all until I'm eating. And then I'm like, yum, this is good. But I'm not like obsessing about it. I'm not thinking about my next meal when I'm eating my current meal. Like, it has absolutely changed how I feel about food, how I think about food, my experience of food. And it's given me freedom over cravings, over, being driven by physiology, i.e. my blood sugar wanting it or my brain wanting it, depending on what reactions were being created by the crap that I was putting in my mouth. And all of that stuff started to fade away. And when you're not having a physiological craving where your body's asking for it and your brain's asking for it, it becomes simpler. It's like, well, no, it's cool. I don't need it. I can let that go. And it became easier and easier as I went along. And I actually created a nutritional program called Food Freedom, which literally is what I got from going carnivore. Just the basics of what is high in plant toxins, what happens, how do our body break them down, like just the basics. What did our ancestors do? Why did they do that? Like, we have known for centuries not to eat tomatoes. I mean, deadly nightshade is in the title and we're still like, no, tomatoes are fine. We can totally eat tomatoes. And then knowing like these processes, like our ancestors knew that if they took the skin off and the seeds out, which is where the high plant toxins are, that, everybody's tummies wouldn't get upset when they were making a tomato sauce or something. And they knew these things, and they didn't have research and they didn't have all of the technology that we have today to say that these things are bad and this is why. They just knew, take this out, people's stomachs weren't upset. So these processes of even soaking rice and stuff that they've done, Asians have done for forever, and to break down those plant toxins by doing those processes were what they were doing, but they didn't know that that's what they were doing. They just thought that that was part of the process of preparing the food and having people being able to digest and absorb those things. And so the program was just to kind of teach people what I've experienced, teach people what I've learned, teach people the kind of common sense side of carnivore, like why is it really this simple? And what does it give you in terms of the freedom of your brain, your body, and your health by eating this way?
I think that's brilliant. For another day when we're talking, I think one of the things I've learned is the more you learn, the more you realize you don't know. And also the more you learn, you realize that you've been fed a lot of rubbish. So when you were saying about these people, for instance, tribes, they didn't know, they just did it. I think that actually may not even be true. I think maybe they did know. Maybe they did know there was a compound in there. Maybe they didn't know oxalic acid, but maybe they did. I think we're told that the ancient civilizations were absolutely in the dark ages, and their knowledge was quite poor. But when you look at architecture and stuff like that, I think there's more revelations coming out now that prove a lot of that is possibly also not true. But anyway, we'll get away from that. We're going to talk some practicalities. You mentioned a scientific term we will come back to, but if I don't ask you these questions, I always get them in the comments if I miss this question. So practicalities, do you do OMAD or 2MAD? Do you add fasting into your regime? What do you do?
I am actually very relaxed about how many times I eat, whether or not I fast. I'm very chill. As we talked about before with the food freedom, you literally do have freedom. So I don't have to eat this much fat or this much protein. People ask me all the time, what are your ratios? They're whatever my taste buds tell me. Like, it is literally that simple. I eat until I'm full. I stop when I'm full or it doesn't taste good. And then I eat again when I'm hungry. If I can't eat at that time that I'm feeling hungry, the hunger wave will go pretty quickly, and I just ride it out until the next one. And then when there's another hunger wave, I'll eat. Like, it is very much driven by instinct. And the only reason that my body can actually run instinctively is because I'm taking away the competition. Carbohydrates literally reset our satiety hormones. So I won't be able to tell if I'm full if I eat carbohydrates. And I was finding that a lot. So a steak that I could normally eat, a big steak with, I'd have, some kind of salad and some type of other greens or veggies on the side, I could eat that entire plate easily. What I found is when I went carnivore, I can eat about half to maybe 3/4 of that steak, and that's it. I'm stuffed. And it was actually the vegetables that were telling my body, you can eat more, you're still hungry. And so now that I've taken that out, I can listen instinctively to my body. If it's not tasting good anymore, or if it needs more fat, like, I will know. I'll be like, I might have some steak and I'll be like, oh, I want butter with this. And I'll go and get a knob of butter and cut it up and eat it with my steak, because my body is asking me for certain nutrients and I can hear what it's asking me. This idea of instinctual eating is great, but it doesn't work practically when we eat carbohydrates. So you can't. So there's, I instinctively eat, or you don't, because your body can't tell you what it's trying to tell you. But that's how you can eat when you're carnivore. And so some days, typically I eat twice a day. I did OMAD for a little while, and what I was finding is I couldn't get in enough nutrients. And I was waking up at night, or I was getting hungry at weird times of the day. And because my stomach has essentially, I assume, shrunken to a point, I can only fit in as much as I can fit in. And so for me, twice a day makes more sense because I can get in the nutrients that I require. On the odd occasion, if I'm not hungry, I'll just go the whole day, and you'll hear me asking my family at 6 o'clock, has anyone seen me eat anything today? Like, I literally can't even remember, have I eaten today? Because even with my clients, with my training, with all the things I have in my day, my energy levels are still up here. I'm not like, oh my God, I must eat. I don't have that anymore. My body can just tap into the fat stores that are already on my body when I need that fuel. And so, sometimes I will go the whole day and I don't need it, and that's cool. But there isn't any plan. Sometimes when I'm recovering from something, like I'm feeling a bit under the weather, or maybe I've had some carnivore foods that aren't the best, like pork rinds or something that's more processed, and I feel a little bit I might do a purposeful 24-hour fast. Like, I'll do it as I feel I need to, but I definitely don't have any kind of structure to it. When I did the 90 days with Professor Kay, I did do fasting because I was following the Steak and Butter Gans protocol with that, and I didn't know anything essentially about that realm. And so I went along with it. But what I found was with their programming, they do have rolling fasts, and you do like 48 hours off fasting, and then you'd have OMAD for 2 days or BIMAD for 2 days, 2MAD for 2 days, sorry, and then you'd go back into a rolling 48-hour fast again. I couldn't do that. So at whatever part of the 90 days that came on board, I couldn't do it. My insomnia was insane. Like, I would wake up in the middle of the night and ding, wide awake. And obviously what my body was telling me was, go and hunt, Jessica. But obviously we don't need to do that these days. And so it was interrupting my sleep, and it was having a knock-on negative effect on my health. And then sorry, my daughter's just calling outside the door. Can hear her going, Mommy.
Do you need to go off and sort that out?
No, they're fine. Daddy's out there with them. He's just ignoring her, obviously, or in the shower or something, because she's just saying his name.
Well, we'll leave that. But that's a nice segue actually into my question, because my next question, because a lot of people that I coach, they have children, okay, and the adults or the person I'm coaching has all these benefits, and then they'll say, but I'm really worried about this for my children. And I'll say, well, what are you feeding them at the moment? And they'll say, well, Lucky Charms and Coke they're having, and they're having maybe pizza and this, that, and the other food that is pretty unhealthy, but they're not worried about that. But some salmon and some eggs, is this going to be healthy for my children? So obviously, hello, you've got one of your children there. What's your views on this way of eating for children?
So this has been probably the hardest part of my journey. This is my youngest, who's very serious. Not really. And she is full carnivore. So she has not had a plant or anything since she was born. She's 2.5. And when we first, because I was pregnant when I went carnivore, so she's highly meat-based. She kind of came into the world when I was in this state. And so it was really great, because we had some issues with her weight when she was little. But we also had an undiagnosed tongue tie, which they didn't diagnose correctly at the hospital. And then when we saw a specialist, they were like, she's got an extremely bad tongue tie and she's not latching properly, and etc. But yeah, so we have healed her. She had a lot of problems, skin conditions, again, get some bowel issues from the crappy poisonous formula that we were obviously having to give her. And so she's been on quite a healing journey. We swapped out her bottles of formula for, bone broth with fats and nutrients and stuff added to it. And she used to have her bottles were literally bone broth. So we were so pleased to leave London and get away from what we were dealing with there, so that we could actually work on healing her health. And since then, just thriving. Hair started to grow, weight straight back on, bowels much happier. And so she's just fully carnivore, and she doesn't know any different. And someone tried to give her some vegetable at a birthday party, and she just sat there and stared at it like, what the hell is that? And she kind of picked it up and wiggled around a bit and put it back down. And it's so interesting, because she equally you'll be unpacking the groceries from the butcher, and she'll try and eat the mince through the packet. Like, she knows where the nutrients are, and she's not going to go away. So we're going to have to sit here quietly. I'm going to sit on the mat. The big girls, so I have 2 older daughters who are 10 and 7, and they are probably 95%, maybe even 98% meat-based. They have the odd bit of pickle, and they have the odd bit of, actually, what else do they have other than pickles at the moment? Not really much. We actually kind of let them. First, we went low oxalates with them, and so they'd have a burger, they'd have that with lettuce cups and onion and pickle and, all the other things with the beef and the stuff. And then they just started leaving the lettuce. And then they started leave, and so that's kind of organically, they have cut the vegetables out themselves, and they're thriving and super healthy. My 7-year-old had really bad gut problems, and we could never work out why she was so inflamed and why she had runny tummy and why she had issues. And we thought, she's paleo, she eats so well. Like, I was that mum that took them to a birthday party and took them their own food to have, their own. I used to make raw vegan kind of slices and stuff out of cashews blended with coconut and all this stuff, and they'd have their own little foods at the birthday party, thinking, oh my gosh, I'm being such a great mum. And actually my 7-year-old was pretty unwell. And so we had a consultation with a nutritional specialist and was told, you must cut vegetables, like you must do this and actually heal her. And I said, but how do I do that? Like, how do I implement that into my child's life when she was eating a lot of plants? And, all the answer I was given was, I don't know how to implement it, but, I'm not a parent. I don't know how you have to do it, but this is what you have to do. And it was really hard. Thank you, Darla. We had to, at the time, the girls were at school. We had to go to the school and say, it's imperative that she doesn't eat other people's lunch boxes or that she's not getting into anything. And sadly, the school did not support us at all. So they said, well, we can't do that, and that we think it's mean and she's missing out if she's not sitting. Because I said, well, maybe she just sit away from her peers. Maybe she just sit and had her lunch in the office. We're talking 10, 15 minutes, in the office, eat your lunch and then pop back out if you guys don't have the time or the resources to monitor our child while they eat, which is fair enough. That's not a school or a teacher's job. But they wouldn't even do that. They said, no, we think that's harmful. We think you separating her from her peers at lunchtime is going to be detrimental for her mental health. And I said, look, I have this letter. It says this. This is what we need to do. She can't eat these foods. It's literally killing her. And they were like, well, we don't agree with you. And it was really hard. They homeschool, and they were only in school in New Zealand for about 6 months when we first moved here. And then since then we have homeschooled. And because of factors like this, like, their health is our top priority, and them eating other people's processed crappy foods that they're having at school was literally, the health of my child. So we just pulled them out. So food's been a funny one. We've had massive backlash from our family. The grandparents don't understand why the kids can't have things, cake, other crap at birthday parties. But for the most part, they at least respect what we're doing, even if they don't agree or understand it. Thank you, sweetheart. She's just giving me my stem cells. We're just going to put those over there.
When you did the homeschooling, did the health improve?
Yeah, it did. It significantly improved their health. The inflammation in my child finally went away. Her gut health got better. Her mood got better and more stable. Because obviously these foods and poisons that we're putting in our bodies, they have a big effect on our mental health. And it's not something that's widely associated that what we put in our mouth affects our mood. And it is. And so that improved dramatically as well with her. So it was definitely the best choice for us. It was hard. Like, I never wanted to be a homeschooling mum. I thought homeschooling kids were kind of weird, to be honest. And I never saw how I would fit that in my world. We have 2 companies. I have 3 different modalities of study and training, plus we've got 3 kids. I was like, how are we going to do this? But their health is the most important thing to me. And them going to school, sadly, was making them sick and ill. Not only what they were actually being learned and all the stuff that goes along with going to, traditional schools, but, just purely from the food aspect, that was harming my child. And so, yeah, definitely their mood, their health, their gut, their inflammation, all these things started to reside as the longer they went on out of the school environment. And it was the best thing that we could have done.
Yeah. And I think 5 years ago, my views about homeschooling would have been, it's probably not a good thing. But now I would, if I was a parent now, I would definitely homeschool. So anyway, right. The $1 million question that we've all been waiting for. Hope people have been putting this in the comments because that was brilliant. So, Jessica, how old are you?
I am 40.
So I was 11 years out, but yes. So I will go through the comments to see if anyone was close, and I hope nobody cheats. That's
Well,
right. So
quite a lot on my social media about that, because for my 40th birthday, which was in April, I had a carnivore party. So I'll send you some pics. So I'm like, so full carnivore kind of Flintstones theme. All the food was full carnivore, like it was amazing. And so I know that some of the people that have watched or followed some of my stuff will know that I'm 40. So they might be able to cheat already. But it's been so amazing. I was excited to turn 40. Like people like, oh my God, what's wrong with you? Nobody's excited to turn 40. And I was like, yeah, I can't wait, because each year my health has been getting better and better. And so when I turned 39, I felt amazing. And I was like, I can't wait till I'm 40. And now I can't wait till I'm 41, because I feel like I am anti-aging. I'm reversing a lot of damage that I did to my body. And I'm actually excited to see how my health and how my body and how my performance improves as I go along, because I'm going to have a huge buildup of oxalates from eating them for so many years, and our body's ability to break them down versus storage. I know that I'm going to be oxalate dumping for a couple of years at least. So I'm just excited to see what that looks like. And it is a bit of a weird one, feeling like excited to age, but we should be. I think human capacity is 150. I think I'm going to live to 120. And I do actually think that. So at 40, I'm only a third of the way through my life. So I'm still, in my mind, I'm still just a baby.
Yeah,
and
I mean,
excited.
2,000 years ago, it was pretty much expected you get past 70 quite easily. So yes, right. Final question, the final question. So if someone's listening to this and they're on the fence about being carnivore, what quick advice would you give to someone that's saying to you, I'm not sure whether I should do this? So how would you convince that person on the fence?
I would probably just say try it. Like, anyone can do anything for 4 weeks, right? It's not that hard. The other thing I would say is think of this as an elimination diet. Whenever medical professionals are trying to look at whether or not a food or something you're putting in, i.e. a stimulus into the system, is having a positive or negative response, when they're doing it with food, typically what they do is they pull it back to an elimination diet. And that is meat. And the reason they do that is because it's not inflammatory. It's non-inflammatory. And that's essentially what you're trying to do. So what they do is they go, do an elimination diet, go back to this. And then once we've got your baseline, now we can start implementing different things and see how your body reacts to it. So this has been around forever. That's the other thing. If you take it away from the medical side and go, okay, I'm not just doing it to see what my body can tolerate, but I'm thinking even further back as to what did my ancestors eat? How did they live? How did they thrive? How did our brains grow? Like, start looking deeper into the ancestral stuff, because it's very, very clear what we are made, designed, what's species specific for us is meat. And I think once we have that reassurance that we don't need vegetables, that they're not adding anything, they're actually taking from us, and we start changing that perception, it's easier to give it a go. And then once you've done 4 weeks, you're going to have a very clear answer to whether or not this is something that is beneficial for you or not. The only add-in I put on that is if you did decide, yes, I want to go for full carnivore, I'm gonna change my world. If you decide to go all the way in, transition yourself for 6 to 8 weeks. If you do it too rapidly, you can cause real gastrointestinal distress. You can cause problems with, obviously, your microbiome, populations dying away, and you ending up with diarrhea and other things. If you want to avoid that then do it gradually. Start by getting rid of the most toxic plants, beef up your ratios. So get your ratios of meat up, bring those plant toxins down, and gradually transition over for 6 to 8 weeks.
Wow, wasn't Jessica brilliant? And if you want to see more videos, why not check this one out from Dr. Anthony Chafee? This one. Just click that one.